What's going on, y'all? It is I, Tevin Chapo. Friends call me Chop, and I'm back with another review. This time, we are talking about Kendrick Lamar's new album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Now, if you don't know who Kendrick Lamar is, come on, you know exactly who Kendrick Lamar is. Rapper, lyricist, Grammy Award winner, Grammy Award nominee, coming off his last full-length release, Damn, that came out in 2017. Now, Kendrick has put out music since 2017, primarily just unreleased cuts here and there, a few singles, but mainly just features specifically for his cousin Baby Keem. Prior to this album's release, he dropped The Heart Part 5, which I also did a video for. I'm going to tag it here. Is it here? So just given off of the major success of not only Kendrick, but TDE as a label with the various people on the roster, such as Schoolboy Q, SZA, Isaiah Rashad, there was a lot of hype coming into this album. I especially was super hype for this album, just mainly off of being a Kendrick Lamar fan for as long as I've been. I've been following him since Overly Dedicated some years back, and it's just been a really, really dope journey. And I must say, just overall, this album did not disappoint in any capacity. Now with the new album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, Kendrick is coming in a lot more personal. He's coming in a lot more in a place of healing in a lot of respects. Just a lot of themes of healing, a lot of themes of coping with trauma, a lot of themes of also just overcoming generational abuse, generational pain, struggles, and just the ways that people cope with trauma and the ways that we need to figure out better to express ourselves and just finding real love for not only for yourself, but for the people that are really there for you at the end of the day. You can definitely tell that Kendrick is just in a different place in his life, just mentally. Now, the album starts off with the song United in Grief, where Kendrick essentially asks himself a bunch of philosophical questions that he comes around to saying, hey, I don't have the answers to. He also speaks on going to therapy and finding peace of mind within self. He later goes into a story about a sexual encounter he has with a green-eyed woman, and they're essentially just literally united in grief in that exchange, just given her past and his, that they're both escaping in the moment. And sex and lust comes up throughout the album just as a means of Kendrick expressing that is a crutch of his, a demon that he has been essentially fighting for a while now, and looking for redemption in a lot of respects in his relationship with his woman / mother of his child. We have the song Worldwide Steppers, where Kendrick goes into a story about his interracial experiences sexually, and just how that made him quote unquote racist in respects. Kodak Black also makes a short appearance on this song and many songs throughout the album. His appearances are overall, I would say, good in my opinion. I didn't find any issues with them in any real capacity. I really like the rich interlude where Kodak is essentially talking about the poverty and the struggles that he had to go through and a lot of the things that he had to overcome to get to the place that he is now. Kodak's feature on Silent Hill is also pretty solid. I think it's probably the most lackluster thing about the song itself. Kendrick comes in pretty strong, essentially talking about how he's pushing the fakes off and being tired of being associated with disingenuous people. And by disingenuous people, there's also just conversations about just, not being on social media as often, or just not constantly just following the trends or following the things that everybody subscribes to in this new internet age that we live in. You have the song N95 where Kendrick is just essentially telling you to keep all that shit, keep all the hypocritical behavior, keep all the fakery, calling it ugly as fuck. The same themes come up in Rich Spirit as well, where Kendrick is essentially calling himself attractive because he doesn't necessarily subscribe to the things that have made us ugly, as he mentioned in N95. I like how skeletal the beat is. It's really airy and eerie at the same time, with just vocals in the background echoing on a real type of Cali bounce type of wave. There are also songs like Father Times, Mother I Sober, Auntie Diaries that are super introspective into Kendrick Lamar's family life and family dynamics. Personally, I really love Father Time. Just being a black man with strained relationships with the male figures in his life, I really can relate to how Kendrick Lamar comes in just talking about how essentially his father raised him into toxic masculinity, just always having to be tough, never showing weakness, never showing emotion, even having lines talking about how when his father's mother died and he went right back to work, talking about how the bills still need to be paid. Mother I Sober is also a really deep track where Kendrick talks about just the abuse that he's seen in his life and his family, the abuse his mother has experienced in her life and the traumas that came with it. Always having to deny abuse because of the abuse that essentially his mother experienced in the past. Also, towards the end of the track, Kendrick discusses lust again and just essentially how he's using that as a coping mechanism. On this track, Kendrick also speaks about how he doesn't necessarily do drugs or alcohol, but he uses sex and his lust within himself as essentially a drug in a lot of respects. Auntie Diaries is essentially a track about homophobia and just growing up as a child, being naive to what homophobia was or how judgmental the world is towards people. Kendrick just really gives a good reflection of himself in a lot of respects and how it's contradictory for him to use the F-bomb, but then try to judge a white fan for saying the N-word at his shows that happened a few years back. Now, Kendrick also dives deep into love with songs like We Cry Together. It's definitely one of the more intense songs on the album. Kendrick and Taylor Page basically go back and forth with verses in a argumentative situation between two lovers. It's super intrusive to the point where you feel like a fly on the wall in the room watching them argue. And it's just how deep they get into their arguments. It's just super insightful and interesting just in terms of seeing how relationships can be toxic in times, but also can lead to love, for better or worse. I like how the song comes full circle with coping with your demons through sex by having it end with them having makeup sex after the long argument. Songs like Die Hard, where Kendrick essentially wants to be loved for himself despite all the demons that he has and the faults that he tries to make right. Even with the song Purple Hearts featuring Summer Walker and Ghostface Killah, it has a great theme of just love and loving people through the worst and showing continuous love. Essentially talks a lot about love over death in a lot of respects. Baby Keem also makes an appearance on the second half of that album to pretty much, I would say, double down on a lot of the themes about family and dealing with the traumas of your past and dealing with the traumas of just having experiences with different family members. I really enjoyed his feature on the Savior interlude, where he talks a lot about just his mom situation and situations with his uncle passing away and him making money just to come home to bury him in a lot of respects. That song also leads into Savior, where Kendrick is doing a really good job of just talking about how, hey, him and other celebrities are not our saviors. They're not going to essentially save our soul. They're not going to be there for us when we absolutely need them, because they are human and have to figure out things for themselves. And we have to figure out things for ourselves as well. Now, the last track on the album is Mirror, where Kendrick double downs on a lot of the themes that he's been speaking on throughout the album, just pretty much speaking on how much he picks himself over a lot of the toxic things, the toxic culture that we live in. I really like the groovy, almost neo soul like instrumental on this record. I can appreciate how it is both harmonious, but for me, it sounds like something also kind of straight out of a blaxploitation movie. And I think it really does a good job of closing off the album and closing off a lot of just what has been spoken upon within the album. Now, overall, this album is super dense. It is heavy, and it's not necessarily for the most average listener. It has some more contemporary songs on it, primarily like things like the Kodak feature on Silent Hill, or even just the moments of like N95 that have like a trap beat. But overall, it's super dense into just where Kendrick's mental is, and just a lot of things are just more so healing and growing more than anything. So it's not necessarily for the most casual of fans, I would say. But if you are a fan of Kendrick Lamar or a fan of hip hop music, I would definitely suggest that you give this one a listen. It is definitely become one of my favorite projects to come out this year. It is definitely just well done, well crafted. The instrumentals know to fit each occasion. They definitely know when to come off as contemporary to give you that type of energy, and they also know how to be low key enough to get the points across throughout the vocals. But overall, I really enjoyed this record, man. Kendrick came in with another one, another really great, I don't want to call it classic yet, but really great project. If I had to give it a rating out of 1 to 5 flames, it's easily 5 flames, no question about it. Now, I have seen on Twitter a lot of people say that this album doesn't have any bops, or people saying that it's mid. And to those people, I just say, feel how you want to feel. At the end of the day, Kendrick gave me, as a fan, an album that I appreciate. I appreciate the multifaceted perspectives that Kendrick gives. I appreciate just the different themes that he touches on. I find it super relatable. I find it super needed for this time that we're in. So if this isn't your cup of tea, I completely understand. There are definitely moments like We Cry Together that are not for the casual listener at all. But if you are a fan of hip hop, I definitely suggest that you give this one a listen regardless and just formulate your own opinions. You know, me coming out of this album, I can't necessarily judge anyone who likes or dislikes anything. You know, Kendrick speaks so much about just forming your own opinions and not necessarily thinking for others, but thinking for yourself. So I can't necessarily take those themes in and then come on here and tell you that your opinion is wrong. But to me, I think this album is great. You know, in the grand scheme of Kendrick's discography up to this point, it's definitely a progression. Maybe not necessarily musically, but in terms of just mentally where Kendrick is in his life and just the types of messages that he gives off in his music, you can tell throughout the years the different phases that he's been in. And you can see a lot of these themes that he talked about in this album being reflected in the albums of the past. The themes of using lust to cope with the pain of the trauma that you deal with on a daily. Things that were brought up in Good Kid, Mad City. Talking about wanting loyalty and wanting real love around you. Themes that were touched on in Damn. Even just the healing past your traumas in Section 80. And I think, like I said, this is a great way to capture all of those themes that Kendrick brought up in the past into this current record. But hey, these are just my opinions on the album. What did you think about Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? I primarily want to hear more so from the people who dislike it. Like, if you dislike it, what is it about this album that's not necessarily gelling with you? Just let me know in the comments below. How do you feel about the record? I love it. I probably played it maybe 5 or 6 times up to this point. And by the time this comes out, I probably have played it another 5, 6 times. So it's definitely one of my favorite albums to come out this year. But again, let me know what you think about it below. Also, while you're here, don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We got more videos on the channel as well. Check out the past videos. I'm going to link them in the description as well. And I'm going to catch y'all next time, man. It is I, Tevin El Chapo. Friends call me Chop. And I'll catch y'all next time. I said that twice. It doesn't matter. Y'all take it easy.